Let's talk about Festival of Sin and Other Fantasy Tales by J.M. Unrue. Hey guys, I'm Rilene and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about the indie book Festival of Sin and Other Fantasy Tales by J.M. Unrue. So I know it's been a while since I've been on YouTube. I took a little bit of a YouTube break and then we went away on holiday. I think the last video I made was like the third week of November or something, but I am back and I'm planning on doing much more regularly scheduled content. But you know, with me saying that doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna realize, but we'll see how the year goes and what happens. Happy 2024, and welcome back to work for everyone who's joining me coming back to work this week. Also, if you do hear any weird noises in the background, dogs barking, doors slamming, people talking, whatever, we very recently came back from holiday, and so people are unpacking things and the dogs are settling back in after coming back. So yeah, it's a bit of a whirlwind outside of my room at the moment, so just ignore any weird noises that you hear. So, firstly, where did I get access to this book? So I read the EPUB version of this book, so I do not have a nice paperback copy to show you, but as always, the cover is on the thumbnail of this video. So I recently became part of Readsy Discovery as a reviewer. So what is Readsy Discovery? So for those of you who don't know Readsy, you need to. It has a few different platforms. It has a freelancer platform where you can find editors, proofreaders, typesetters, people like that. It also has a platform for authors where, amongst other things, you can create a great looking ebook. And then it also has Readsy Discovery, which is a platform to discover new books, especially books by indie authors. So as an indie author myself, I think that is amazing. And so Readsy actually approached me and asked if I would like to apply to become a Readsy Discovery reviewer. I went through the process, got vetted, and now I'm officially a Readsy Discovery reviewer. And so I have access to all of these indie arcs that I can now review for you guys. If you are interested in becoming a Readsy Discovery reviewer yourself, I have an affiliate link in the description box below. Otherwise, you can just, Google Readsy Discovery and go there on your own if you're not into affiliate links. So, without further ado, I received an arc from Readsy Discovery, A Festival of Sin and Other Tales of Fantasy by J.M. Unrue. Now, let's first get into what this book is about. I'll be reading you the blurb and giving you a little bit of my own explanation. 5 stories of fantasy plus a bonus novel. Number 1, The Festival of Sin. A trio of stories about an ancient astronaut long removed from Earth, the strange worlds and peoples he encounters, and his quest to belong. So this is essentially about someone who was in a storm in, I think it's ancient Crete. Can't remember 100%, but I'm pretty sure it's that. And then when he, drowns in the storm, he is saved by a group of aliens taken to their home planet and then becomes a sort of space explorer, which is definitely sci-fi and not fantasy, even though this book is classified as fantasy. And then the next story is The Florentine Mirror, a mirror that holds a deadly secret of long ago treachery and tragedy. So it's essentially about a couple who move to a rural area and they set up a plantation house as sort of a B&B, and there's a Florentine mirror in the house and the wife sees people in this mirror, and then how that unfolds. I'd say it's potentially a lot more horror than fantasy, but it is like fantasy adjacent. Then there's The Cabbage Patch. Coma patients discover a strange limbo where they are able to see the world in a new light. not much more I can say about that. It's a group of patients who are essentially in a coma and who are in this house with different rooms and what that entails. And then the final story is Hands, a novella about a man who struggles to come to terms with an extraordinary power and the magic beneath his fingers. So essentially this is about a man who can heal people with his hands, and, you know, everything that entails. So that is what the story is about. As usual with my reviews, I'll be going through different categories and rating it out of 5 stars for each of those categories, and then aggregating those scores and getting to a average score. So the first category is plot and world building. And now let's see for the Festival of Sin. Honestly, it's this sort of epic story about this ancient astronaut that goes to this new planet and he is taken in by this whole new species and becomes an explorer and goes to different planets, and I think he even goes to Earth at some point later on in his life. But even though that may sound like it's supposed to be a really interesting premise and it's going to be an exciting story, I really found the plot and the world building to be quite boring. So Festival of Sin is divided into like 3, and the other stories in the book are sort of inserted in between. So the first story as part of the Festival of Sin is mostly exposition. Honestly, the world building is exposition, the plot is exposition. Even some descriptions, like the author would say, you know, this thing is like this kind of fish, and then go into like a whole paragraph describing the fish. So it's like, it's not really giving me any like simile vibes, because like, I don't know what this fish is, and then you go and explain the fish. It's like you could have just explained the thing you were comparing to the fish, if that makes sense. So this made it really, really difficult to get into this book, because that's the first thing you read. It's like the first story as part of the Festival of Sin. And the plot is very thin and is mostly given to us through exposition. The world building was quite lackluster and like nothing new. Yeah, there were aliens and they traveled, and I guess it's an interesting aspect that it's like in ancient times, but that's also a concept that's been explored quite a bit. And so there was nothing really that stood out to me about the world building, and it wasn't my favorite plot either. So, yeah. Then the Florentine Mirror. It was actually a really good build up of the plots, of the woman, you know, seeing the things in the mirror, having these weird dreams, and then how that builds up and you're wondering the whole time, like, what's happening, who's in the mirror, what's the story here. I enjoyed it throughout. I enjoyed reading this story, but then the ending is very anticlimactic and sort of just, okay, that's the answer. There's, you know, it builds up to something that's going to be quite intriguing, and then it's just like, oh, okay, cool. So there's nothing really exciting about the ending, and I felt quite disappointed by that, because like I said, I enjoyed the build up of the plot up to that point. Then there's The Cabbage Patch, which, I'm going to be very honest, was my least favorite story in this book, and I can't really remember lots about it for that reason. But I don't really get the point of it. I don't get what the author was trying to say, what they were trying to do. If they were trying to like be very like philosophical and trying to like make a point, but I don't think then that was made clearly enough. Whether they were trying to get a plot across because there wasn't really that much happening, whether they were trying to focus on character, but then I can't remember a single character in it. So it just sort of felt like a story that someone wrote without really knowing what they wanted to achieve with it, what the point of the story was. It just sort of like half an idea that didn't really go anywhere. And then the final story, Hands. I thought it was an interesting concept. It's nothing revolutionary, but not every story has to be. I think it was decent, but it sort of had that same kind of meandering plotting of the other stories in this book, where you're not really sure what the point is, where it's going. It had like one original aspect to the whole healing hands thing, but the rest of it is so like old hat and done before that it just, takes away from what the story could have been. And it tries to establish a conflict, but it also I feel like it just doesn't go hard enough at that. It stops halfway. And so it was interesting, it was okay, but it wasn't great. And so for plot and world building, 1.5 stars from me. Then characters. The Festival of Sin. There aren't really many fleshed out characters in this story, and the ones that do exist are really half formed. Like, they're only there for their very specific purpose, and that's essentially all you know about them. And yeah, there's no real depth and exploration of many of the characters. The main character is interesting at some points. I think the idea of him starting as someone, in ancient Crete and then becoming this astronaut and kind of learning all of these new things and exploring humanity, and kind of the struggle between, I'm not supposed to interfere, but then feeling like he has to. I feel like that's a very interesting concept, but it just still also feels like it wasn't developed enough. It was just sort of, here I am, this is happening to me, okay, kind of thing. And then in terms of the female characters, it was quite clear that they were written by a man. And I'll get to more of that when I get to the romance part. But yeah, it was just, once again, a bit lackluster and half-formed for me, the characters. Then the Florentine Mirror. I quite enjoy the characters in this book, the married couple. The husband is working on a thesis on religion, and I feel like it was very, very interesting, the things that he would think about and be putting into his thesis and stuff like that. That was actually, I think, one of the most interesting parts of this book for me, and so I enjoy their dynamic and them as characters. The Cabbage Patch, don't ask me a single character's name in that. I don't know. I can't remember any of the characters. Then Hans, the main love interest in Hans. I found her to be a very interesting character, and I enjoyed reading about her and her story and what she's thinking and her motivations and all of that. The main character, everything came very easy for him, even when it was supposed to be like these huge, sad points in his life. And I found him to be a bit whiny. Like, the moment something goes wrong, it's like, the end of the world and you're never touching anything again. And I just kind of was like, just get over yourself kind of thing. So for characters, that's 2 stars for me. Then romance. Festival of Sin. So I should start for overall for this book. There's very little romance. It's not a romance. It's not a fancy romance. And so I can't really judge it that hardly on romance. But there are little tidbits of it. And so I'll be talking about that. So in Festival of Sin, once again, very little romance. But it does have, I think it has 2 romantic subplots, small subplots. The little romance that it has was so clearly written by a man and not by a very, I don't want to say not a very romantic one, because I don't want to attack the author personally. I have nothing against the author or anything like that. It's just very clearly this wasn't aimed at anyone who wants to read anything about romance or anything romantic, or I don't know. I also don't want to make it a gender reductionist thing, but it's also like the women in the story, the 2 times that there was like a romantic subplot in the story, they didn't say much, and there wasn't much development of their relationship. It was literally just like one day they'd be like, oh, women here choose their own mates. I choose you. Now we sleep together. And that's it. And so for me, I was just like, there's no chemistry between these characters. They didn't have any, like, banter or... there was nothing there. It was just like, you know, this man came here and now we're together. So yeah, I literally in my notes wrote, they all just choose their own mate and then choose the main character for no reason and then they just sleep together. That's essentially the romance. Florentine Mirror, the married couple was cute, but this wasn't a romantic story. Didn't really have a romantic subplot, so I can't judge it on that. Cabbage Patch, no romance either, as far as I can remember. Then there's Hans. So the romance was actually a pretty big part of the plot for this story. But I feel like it was more focused on interior character development as a relationship progresses, as opposed to just a romance, which is completely fine. It was definitely the best romance in the whole book. I don't think that it was fleshed out enough. I think more could have been done with it, but I don't think that that was the intention of the author. And so I can't really criticize that because, you know, I think it suited the type of book that the author was writing. And so for the romance, I'll go, just because it's not really there, but I also feel bad giving it a bad score for that, but I'm going to go 1 star for the romance that there is in this book, just because I think the Festival of Sin, the romance, the thing of like choose your mate and then randomly choose this person for no reason, was very annoying to me. Pacing. The Festival of Sin has terrible pacing. So like I said, the first part was literally just exposition and very little plot. I think you could fit the plot of that first section in like two pages, maybe not even 2 pages. Yeah, it was just not great. And that, like, honestly almost made me DNF the book. The only reason I kept reading was because of the writing style, which we will get to in the next one. It's like things aren't given much emotional weight, and then other things are given a lot, and you don't really understand the distinction. You don't really get time to, like, process anything. It's just like stuff is happening. Oh, okay, it's happening. And then suddenly it's just like introspection about everything. But then other things happen and there's no introspection about it. And world building is just sort of like shoved down your throat. The Florentine Mirror has really good pacing. I really enjoyed the build-up of the story. I feel like it was really well done. The mix between character-driven and plot-driven was really good. And I don't know, I just really enjoyed this kind of introspective, almost calm approach to something like horror. Or not necessarily horror, but like dark fantasy then, if you want to go there. So I was really invested and I felt like the pacing was really good up until the sort of meh ending that once again didn't get the emotional weight that I think it deserved. Then there's the Cabbage Patch, which, like, the plot was so thin and meandering that I really can't judge the pacing because I don't know what the pacing was supposed to be. Yeah, so I was just like, everything just felt like, what is this doing here? So I can't really go, you know, more of this or slower of that and faster of that, because I was just like, stuff's happening. Then Hans, I feel like the pacing was quite all over the place, but it was actually okay. I think it's good that this story came at the end, because I think by that point I'd sort of gotten used to the way that this author was writing and understood more of like the vibe that he was in and what he wanted to convey. And so I think that if I had just read the story, I might have gone like, what is up with this pacing? But I think by the time that I got to the end of the book, I was sort of used to it. And so it's okay pacing. It's decent pacing. So the pacing, it's 2.5 stars. Then there's writing style. Now this is the one aspect I think that sort of redeems this book a bit. It's a very, very interesting style of fantasy writing, in the sense that it's more character than plot driven, which, you know, that in of itself isn't necessarily that unique, but it's character driven in a very literary, introspective way. And so it's written very slice of life, stream of consciousness almost kind of way. I feel like if Virginia Woolf wrote fantasy, this is the style that she would write it in. I think that it's very interesting, and that's what kept me reading, was going, this is interesting. These are kind of the things that, the kind of writing style and the way of weaving different aspects of the story together that I studied at university, and that I find very interesting. I don't think it's necessarily viable in a contemporary fantasy market, but it is very good. So I think what was a little bit annoying, or maybe disappointing is a better word, about this book was that I don't think the substance was good enough to support the style. I think that if you have a style like this, you need something that's really unique and pushes boundaries and makes people think in the substance as well as in the writing. And so I think that this book alienates more commercial readers, people who just want to read a good book, you know, a good story, by not having enough attention to pacing and characters and having enough of an original plot, but then also having a writing style that is more difficult to get through and is more literary than they would like to read. But I think that this book also then alienates people who would want to read something more literary. Firstly, by being in a genre fiction genre, that like fantasy, although I think this has a lot of sci-fi and horror elements in it as well. But that's okay, because I think that there could be a market for like a literary fantasy. There is a market for that. But it alienates that market as well, because it doesn't have enough of a deep, well-rounded character life and message and story. And so I think that's what makes this book difficult, especially difficult to judge, because, like I said, writing style is good, but there's a mismatch. And so for writing style, I'm going to give it 3 stars. And then my final category is overall enjoyment. I did not enjoy this book. It was a struggle to get through it. It really honestly made me consider not being a Readsy reviewer anymore. And this is the first book I've had to review. I just couldn't wait to finish it so that I could go on to read other things. Yeah, so when you add that all together, divided by 5, you get 2.2. So Festival of Sin and Other Tales of Fantasy by J.M. Unrue gets 2.2 stars from me. It's difficult for me to put this out and to be this harsh on a book, because I think that usually if I would read a book that I just didn't like this much, I just wouldn't put out a review on it. But obviously, you know, I have been given an arc in exchange for an honest review. And so I do think that if you are in the market for literary fantasy and plot-driven, fast pacing is not something that you're necessarily that worried about, maybe give this book a try. I do think that it's a good look into the idea of stream of consciousness in fantasy writing. So yeah, that's it. That's my review for today. I hope that you liked this video. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Remember to hit that subscribe button and ring that little bell if you don't want to miss any videos. I post writing advice videos on Wednesdays and book reviews on occasional Fridays. As always, you can find me on my website, Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, TikTok, and BookBub. All the links are listed below. And then I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.